Hey there, this is Darren. Had you considered your sample size? So when you have a message that matters or you have a story that you're working on, what's the sample size that you're looking at? And what's the norm of what a professional or what an expert or somebody who's world class, what would they say is a good sample size? So I'll get to the relevant example of my life right now, but early days of stand-up comedy, I was taught, comedian would give the same exact routine, word for word, for three shows. One show on Friday and 2 shows on Saturday. It's kind of a normal weekend for a comedian. And that's just like 3 shows. It's in 2 days. And you look at the different responses, but sometimes it's the audience because maybe they're too drunk on the late show on Saturday night. Maybe it's Friday, they're tired because they've been working all day, it was a long week. But what's your sample size when you're working on a line or a story? It was amazing because when I came to Toastmasters, when I first got there, when I was testing new material, I would try out a new joke or a new line in a story, and the reaction I would get sometimes would be one person would go, huh, right at the right spot. And I would be so pumped and excited because I'm like, yes, I'm on the right track. I knew I had to clarify it to bring more people in so they could see the change of direction, they could get the punchline. But sometimes our sample size is just too small, and we could be really close to a big breakthrough. So today, I'm working on learning Facebook ads. So I'm traveling, I'm in the airport, Logan Airport, headed back to Vegas. But I was at my sister's today getting some work done and working on Facebook ads and going through a course and then testing it, and it was just fascinating, the differences. So in the course I was taking, it was saying that, one ad you send out to mobile, and one ad just to desktop, and you see the difference in response. And I remember that, and it reminded me back of the early stand-up comedy days that sometimes it could be you, sometimes it could be the audience, sometimes it could just be, the raising of the eyebrow at the right point in time gets the reaction that you're looking for. So there's so many factors, whether it's advertising or working on a new story, a new joke. So many factors that sometimes if your sample size isn't enough, you could be missing gold. Don't judge too soon. Because when I would throw out that first idea at Toastmasters and one person would giggle or right at the right point, I just knew I was onto something. I knew there was more. I knew there was more work I had to do. But I would see many Toastmasters starting out with a new story, and they'd spend 2 weeks writing this story and working on their speech, and they'd give it at Toastmasters and it wouldn't work, and they would start over and write a new speech, and I'm like, what are you thinking? That's ridiculous. Because you put so much time and effort in, you've got to adjust and edit. Great stories aren't written, they're rewritten. Great jokes aren't written, they're rewritten. Great messages aren't written, they're rewritten. Great ads aren't written, they're tested and tweaked and tested and tweaked. So look at your sample size before you throw away an idea or a bit or a line or a piece of your story. You've got to have a big enough sample size. So in the early days of stand-up, I know that I did a lot more than the average Toastmaster because of my training from the pros who taught me. So when I was doing Facebook ads early on, just trying to figure it out myself, I would just have one ad and run it, or maybe an A/B split test, and that was it. Meanwhile, watching this course and going through this program, they would have one ad and they would change the image. They would have the same exact copy and do a video. They would have the same exact copy and run it to mobile. They would have the same thing and run it to desktop. And it's just amazing. They said, and then here's the other thing of sample size. They said you got to wait 24 hours before you start judging whether it's good enough or not, which one actually is stronger. And that's the cool part. We can't figure it out ourselves because we're often too close to our message. I think the same thing applies when we're working on our message. We've got to give it enough of a sample size. If you're a Toastmaster, go try the same story at 3 or 4 different clubs, even if you're not a member, before you really say throw it away or write a new one. I just think there's so much gold there, and there's so much work you put in that you truly, even a small club, it's just not a big enough sample size. So if you're working on your message, if you really want gold, really want to help people, be willing to make some mistakes, some tweaks, and edit, and have a bigger sample size, because you might be that close to gold. See ya. Tell your story, inspired by example.